Richmond, Virginia, home of the 6th Mythic Championship. 32 MPL players and more than 500 of the best Magic players from all corners of the world will battle it out for glory, their share of $500,000, and a seat at the Magic the Gathering World Championship. The 6th Mythic Championship starts now.
It certainly does start now. Hello everyone, wherever you are around the world, welcome to our continuing live coverage of Mythic Championship VI from here in Richmond, Virginia, USA. Rich Hagan, your host, alongside Maria Bartholdi and Eduardo Sanchkalik, bringing you all the action. It is going to be so good, and we've already done a 12-hour shift yesterday. Maria, how was it?
It was awesome, Rich. I particularly love the draft format because it's so good, and we saw a lot of people playing outside the box, kind of Dwarven Mind plus Ferocity of the Wild's mono red deck. Like, that's where I'm at.
Now, Eduardo, of course, in the afternoon, 1 million Oko decks, because 2/3 of the field, roughly, are on some version featuring Oko Thief of Crowns. But we had tremendous Magic in the feature match area all day long.
Right, we got to see a lot of, especially early on, a lot of kind of races going on, like Selesnya Adventure decks were kind of pulling through really quickly. Then we kind of saw the real star of the show up, Sultai Sacrifice, the talk of the tournament, I think, so far, with an astonishing win rate against the field, and in my view, the true mirror breaker.
Okay, so we'll see how that pans out this afternoon. But how does the day pan out? Maria, schedule.
All right, let's take a look at the schedule and the formats we'll be battling with today. Well, if you didn't join us yesterday, it's going to be the same thing. We start things off with Booster Draft, and then we go into Standard. So rounds 9 through 11, Throne of Eldraine Draft. Limited fans, you're in the right place and you're here at the right time. Then we cut to Standard. Swiss pairings, which means you play people on the same record as you. Best of 3 matches. Everybody who got 4 wins or better got a chance to come back, and they are here today. And of course, it all comes down to Sunday. It is our top 8. Once again, they'll be playing Standard, single elimination, best of 5 matches, first 2 games, pre-sideboard.
Eduardo, we have plenty of money on the line, the prize purse of $500,000. How does it all spread itself around?
Sure, I mean, we're going to start right at the bottom with our Grand Prix participants, who will be collecting $500 over there.
Not bad.
However, for the people still in contention today, they're vying much higher. There are some people, starting 4-4, so they're like hoping to get a little higher, trying to get into that 1724, 916. Still a good weekend, $6,000 maybe in the bank. The real prize, though, is that top 8 with $10,000 per participant, a player's tour finals appearance that was confirmed yesterday, and first place prize, not just $50,000 in cold hard cash, but a seat at the World Championship, which some would argue, honestly, is even better.
Right, okay, so yesterday we had 8 rounds. What we're going to do over the next 3 or 4 minutes is walk you through some of the highlights from yesterday. So let's get to it. And we began, there you see some of the 500 players who were out on the floor. There's our featured draft board. It had 3 MPL players back to back to back: Shahar Shenhar, Mike Sigrist, and Jess Estefan. Now, Shahar Shenhar's deck, it was blue-black. It had a Lockmere Serpent, but it didn't have a lot else going on. Here in the opening round, he's up against Alexei Shasov of the Russian Federation. Shahar would win this one by 2-1. Plenty of removal. He just kept staying alive. It was an old-fashioned counterspell, which is very exciting to see, of course, for someone like me. Alexei Shasov, like, what do you do that to me? That wasn't fair at all. And there's the handshake, Shahar Shenhar picking up the victory. On the right of shot, one of the best limited players of all time, that is Mike Sigrist. Of course, in round 2, he was up against Matt Schmaltz. Sigrist will win this one by 2-0. There were plenty of evasive creatures in this one. We saw a Grum Gully, we saw a Gingerbrute flying in there. Sigrist would go on to play for the pod in round number 3 against this man on the top of your screen, Paul Quillet. In this one, well, there were mice and rats for Paul in game 1. He took that opener. Game 2, there was Wildborn Preserver getting bigger. Game 2 was a pretty quick kill for Sigrist. He would go on to win that match and be undefeated in draft. Not a massive surprise, to be fair. So then we go into Standard, and here we go. Here's our first glimpse at Standard, and Andrew Cuneo from the MPL was up against William Arahoya in this one, and it begins turn 2 Innkeeper action. But there wasn't the ability to Embercleave because of what was essentially a Cop Black, if any of you remember that from back in the day. Kinyo won that one to advance. This was the match of the day. This was round 5. Riley called it out as being particularly entertaining. Thomas Hendricks from the Netherlands with his Mythic Championship top 8 appearances up against the underdog, notionally, Greg Keithley. There was an early venerated Loxodon in this one. Greg basically kept playing very, very patiently, and the way this one ended up, it was all about a Skagen Hellkite off the top at the end. On we go to round 6. Here's Luis Salvato up against Tim Wu, who is always a super tough opponent, not least because he spends a lot of time thinking very, very hard. Luis Salvato deep in the MPL, well, 31st of 32 right now, trying to get into the top 20 to remain in the MPL for next year, and he had a very decent day at the office. Picked up the win there to go to 4-2, finished at 6-2. On we go. First look at Brad Nelson in the constructive rounds. Here he is up against Mats Törnros of Sweden. And this one, Brad had a Casualties of War. He had a second Casualties of War. It was an epic first game. Still wasn't enough to stop Nissa from ultimating. There was a second Nissa, but that was as good as it got for Mats Törnros, because in game number 2, Brad just utterly pulverized the Swede. And then game number 3, you're going to see a sad selection of basic forests on the left-hand side of your screen. And even though eventually there was more colors of mana for Törnros, it was nowhere near enough. Brad Nelson to 7-0, and I can tell you that he would end up at 8-0 when he beat Josh Utter-Leighton in the deciding round of the day. Josh Utter-Leighton also a terrific day at the office at 6-1-1. But Brad Nelson, 8-0. This game decided who would join him at 8-0, Austin Bursovic or Eli Cassis, 2 American players, and the answer was Eli Cassis, your second player at 8-0. And that brings us to this morning.
Do you need a breath there, Rich?
No, I'm fine.
Well done.
Thank
well,
you.
let's take a look at our leaderboard and find out which players are in good position to be in our top 8 coming on Sunday. Of course, we had 2 players undefeated overnight, Eli Cassis and Brad Nelson. Let's take a look at who is at 6-2 or better as we figure out that's probably where we need to be if we're thinking about getting to the top 8 on Sunday. Of course, you could have 3 losses, but you're going to have to really run the tables today to make that happen.
Right.
So taking a look here.
Yeah, so basically these are in pod order. So the top 8 here will be the 8 players that we're looking at in pod 1. Now, pod 2 is very, very strong. Arne Huschenbeth of Germany at 7-1 is there. Robert Smith, Grand Prix winner from Seattle Tacoma in 2012. The big name for sure in that pod is number 13, Paolo Vita Dama de Rosa. And Eduardo, Paolo Vita is, so many players on today are battling for different things. Paolo Vita Dama de Rosa is right on the bubble in the MPL. That means he's in 20th spot. And if he can stay there or higher, then he stays in the MPL at the for next season. But if he drops just 1 place between now and the end of the year, he's into the Rivals League. So huge stakes today, Eduardo, and not just for Paolo.
Right. As you mentioned, not just for Paolo, although Paolo would like to stay in the MPL. Somebody else who's hopeful, it was a fan favorite, Luis Scott Vargas. We're not going to see him because he's at 4-4. But he said this morning, I really want to get really lucky today, because even at 4-4, he realizes that the difference between a good and a bad day in the office is a slot at Worlds and then in the MPL, or not, pretty much nothing.
Right, and that's because right now, Luis Scott Vargas is one of the 4 players who are in possession of a challenger slot for the World Championship, which is a huge deal. Amongst the challengers from a little further down who are doing well at this tournament, let me offer you Arne Huschenbeth at 7-1, Max Mick at 7-1. In the roundup, I talked about Josh Utter-Leighton, 6-1-1. Eli Cassis, of course, at 8-0. Now remember, the winner will just get a seat at the World Championship, full stop. Andre Strasky doing very well. No Amar of South Korea as well. And there you see, 25 through 48. So this is draft pods 4 through 6, Maria.
Yeah, and taking a look here, we see some big names on 6-2. We've got Wyatt Darby here, Andrew Cuneo of the MPL, Grzegorz Kowalski here, William Huey Jensen at 6-2, and Luis Salvato at 6-2 as well. So, Eduardo, some big names still with a chance out there.
Yeah, I mean, the one I want to kind of highlight from there's a lot of really strong European players that I used to play on the Grand Prix circuit. I'll mention quickly Toralf, who obviously won the last Mythic Championship, even Flock, Louis Deltour, who was looking for a big break, Thomas Hendricks, very strong, but Thomas Ashton, not a name many people will know. He's kind of an unknown player from the US. He always wins the online PDQ on MTGO. On Magic Online, he's always the one. He gets there. Now, the thing is, he went 5-0 in Constructed, and he is the one that constructed that Sultai Sacrifice deck that really terrified the field yesterday. I can tell you there were a lot of happy pilots. I believe we have a deck tech.
I believe we will get Tommy Ashton in this afternoon for sure. Now, the players are down in the feature match area. Let's take a live shot of the feature match area for you, and we'll go round our table and we'll point out who is going to be battling as our main feature table this morning. There's Max Mick kicking things off for us. He's third from Grand Prix Seattle 2019. Round we go. And you're going to see Austin Bursovic next in his 7th Mythic Championship, the champion of Grand Prix Dallas-Fort Worth. Who's next? It's Christian Hauck of the MPL, top 8 from Pro Tour Ixalan in 2017. And next to him, what a fantastic story, Dylan Lurch, LCQ winner, tweeted yesterday, boy, do I need a crash course in Limited. He went 2-1 yesterday. Let's see what he learnt as he remains at the top table. And next, the beast in the room, it's Brad Nelson, the player of the year from 2010, second at Mythic Championship 3, next to the other Ato player, Ely Cassis, 2 Grand Prix titles, both in California in the last 18 months. In the hat, it's Sam Sherman, 11 and 12 from 2 MC starts. This is by far his best of 3 so far. And rounding it out, it's Stefano Vinci in his 5th Mythic Championship, 50% win rate so far. Those are the 8 players at our feature table, and we are ready to go. You will see every pick recorded of Christian Hauck later on, but right now, it's time for the live draft, every pick, every pack of Brad Nelson.
Hello there, good morning, and welcome back to the booth here at Mythic Championship VI. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe, that's Paul Cheon, and we've got Booster Draft for you here. This is our last ride of Booster Draft for the tournament. We're going to do a draft coming up, well, right now, and then we're going to cover the 3 draft rounds. This particular limited format, or I should say limited run at this event, seems to have even more importance than it normally does, where there's a lot of edge to be gained for our players, given that Standard was pretty well settled before we got here.
Yeah, absolutely. There's also this is just a deeper, limited environment that we've seen sometimes in the past. There are a lot more archetypes, and again, not a lot of people are necessarily agreeing on what the strongest archetypes are. It seems like we've seen several members of several teams highly value the blue-black control deck, right? On the flip side of things, we've seen highly aggressive monocolor decks also have success. So, you know, there's a lot of different things that you can do. It's really important to figure out what lane you're supposed to be in during the draft.
That's right. We saw that yesterday as well. Let's take a look at our table here and see who we're going to be watching. The player that we're going to be watching is on the right-hand side of your screen. That, of course, is Brad Nelson, coming in undefeated overnight. I saw some tweets. Paul Rietzel, a few pros were going, boy, I saw Brad 3-0 the draft, and I thought, well, there goes one top 8 slot.
Yeah.
Because Brad, you know, really well known for crushing particularly Standard, but the constructed portion of the tournament. And when he puts up a great limited run, it's like, it's over.
Yeah, Brad is one of those players, you know he's going to be good for at least like a 7-3, you know, in the Standard portion, possibly even an 8-2. And for him, he's had just so much more success in Standard and Limited. So yeah, when he does have that good start in Limited, you know, he's going to be somebody to look out for top 8 contention. And also just, again, for Standard too, he's one of those players who's really known for playing mid-range green decks. You know, games that look to grind people out, he just knows how to get the maximum edge playing those matchups.
All right, looks like Pack 1 Pick 1 is upon us, and what does he find? I saw a Shine Chaser in there.
I saw an Ayara.
Oh, okay. Triple Black's a little rough.
Triple Black is rough. She is pretty powerful, but again, you know, it is a pretty heavy commitment if you take something like an Ayara first pick.
God, I gotta say this pack's not great. There's a Charm Sleep in there. There's a Witching Well.
Yeah,
both of those kind of stand out a little bit, but
yeah, The Enchanted Carriage is the most flexible pick, but because it might make a lot of decks. But honestly, after playing with the card for a while, it's actually been a little underwhelming.
It's fine.
You kind of look at it and you're like, oh, 5 mana and you get maybe 6 power and 6 toughness worth of stats, but it doesn't quite play out exactly the way that it looks. Again, it's a fine card. It'll make your deck most of the time. And given that the rest of the pack wasn't especially powerful, first picking an artifact can never be that wrong.
Yeah, there's a Foulmire Knight, by the way. That's kind of the special version, as well as Fierce Witchstalker in the pack. And what else does he have there?
That's a Sundering Stroke.
Wow, Sundering Stroke as well gets past. One of the most splashable cards. It has an adamant payoff if you happen to be full-on mono red. But never mind that nonsense. You can just cast the thing for 6 in a red, and it's great.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And if you are mono red, it is completely bonkers. I've won so many games just drafting a nice mono red aggro deck. I mean, it costs 7, but when you get there, it just straight up wins you the game.
Well, he's going to take the Sundering Stroke here, just going for the full power level. There's another Fierce Witchstalker. That's the second one that's been passed to him. And boy, if I were Brad, I'd be thinking green has to be at least somewhat open coming from the side here. You see he's got the Hypnotic Sprite pulled to the front as well. Interesting pick here. Green-red, not really one of the best color pairs in the format. That said, if the power level's there, you can do it. And furthermore, green, of course, the best color at splashing, so he may be able to splash for the Sundering Stroke and play green, black or something.
Yeah, certainly. It's one of those things, too. I mean, you're just trying to stay open and identify what the open color is. And if you take this Fierce Witchstalker now and you see an additional green card, you can just kind of move in. And if not, well, you know what? There wasn't a particularly powerful red card in that pack anyways. I think if there was something that was comparable to the Fierce Witchstalker, he would have just taken that. But yeah, the clear best card in that pack was the Fierce Witchstalker.
That's right. And this is, I think this is definitely the correct way to approach booster draft in this format, which is staying open, right? And we've seen players both benefit from doing so and also get punished a bit by not doing so. That was a didn't say please there. And, this is a pretty typical opener. I know it looks weird, right? Colorless card, red card, green card, blue card. But this is what you need to do in this format to get the absolute best deck possible from your seat.
Right.
You got to stay open.
And you will see Brad start to kind of hone in on what he thinks might be open. That's a 5th pick Garenbrig Paladin. If he takes that, he can maybe try to commit to, being a green heavy deck, maybe splashing the Sundering Stroke. So that's something that's possibly an option. That's a Steel Claw Lance, one of the better uncommons if you are Black-Red Knights, but he hasn't really taken any cards to kind of point him in that direction.
Yeah, not even just color-wise.
Right.
Like strategy. You know, he just doesn't have any Knights. Although he did take one here, a Garenbrig Paladin. But that's a different color, of course.
Oh, wow.
Improbable Alliance in the pack here. Now he's looking at the Rosethorn Acolyte, and you can see why. He's already got a 5-drop and a splashable 7-drop. So a card like Rosethorn Acolyte actually goes very well in a deck like this. But boy, you see that Improbable Alliance go by when you've already got Sundering Stroke plus didn't say please, and you're thinking, maybe I should be doing that.
Yeah, I mean, that is one of the signs, right? That's kind of one of the signpost cards for being in the blue-red draw spells archetype. But it looks like Brad, along with a lot of the other people in the draft, not really favoring that strategy because, again, that is one of the most important cards if you're the blue-red deck.
That's right. There's really only 2 cards that truly matter for that archetype, and that's one of them.
Yeah. That being said, Brad just sticking to green, trying to cut it off as much as he can, taking the Wildwood Tracker here, which another card that's kind of risen in value. Typically, 1-mana 1/1s haven't really been very good and limited. But
look at this, Paul. Sage of the Falls now in the pack. That deck is wide open at this point. If you want to draw some extra cards, you can do it here.
Yeah, I mean, there is a chance that somebody does take the Alliance and kind of moves in late, right?
Yeah, well, Brad did just take the Sage of the Falls, so he's going to start kind of cutting that. This is the pack that he opened. And the Shine Chaser's still in the pack. He's looking at Hengewalker as perhaps a bit of filler. Colors-wise, nothing really came back for him, so he'll just take the colorless card. But you can see, take a look at the picks on the left-hand side of your screen. He's starting to settle into green, blue, splash red, but he still has a little bit of flexibility here, depending on what he opens up in the next pack.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like right now he's kind of just taking mostly green cards and thinking, okay, I'm going to give myself some flexibility here. If I continue to see some red cards, you know, if I get some Scorching Dragonfires, maybe I'll splash the red. And if I see some blue cards, maybe I'll take that. But it looks like he's just heavy green. And that's typically the type of strategy that I prefer in this format. You try to cut off one color as much as you can, and that does give you some flexibility. If your deck doesn't come together, you don't get 23 cards to go mono green, sure, take some cards, take some Locked Into Towers, take some Scorching Dragonfires, and you can easily splash those removal spells.
All right, so we're going to wind down pack number 1 here for Brad, but a lot of potential here. The things that stand out to me was green seemed open coming from the right, and also that very late Sage of the Falls too. It's a pretty good card and one that can really do some work in the late part of the game where, you know, you don't really want as many lands. So he's going to review his picks now, and I'm with you, Paul. I feel like if I'm in Brad's seat, I'm thinking I'm definitely going to be green. Let's see where this goes.
Yeah.
Right? And you know, there's a lot of things that can happen pack 2, pick 1, depending on what Brad ends up opening up. And he's not going to be fully committed. But, you know, right now he does have a Didn't Say Please and a Sage of the Falls. So he probably is going to lean that direction and try to splash the Sundering Stroke. But again, anything really goes here. Whatever he ends up opening here could change the direction of this draft pretty significantly as far as his second color goes.
Yeah, if I'm Brad, the things that I'm going to be looking for, of course, are, you know, some of the cards that maybe I could consider splashing, but also just to kind of lower my curve a little bit. It's a little bit on the heavy side right now. You've got the Fierce Witchstalker, you got Enchanted Carriage, you might be splashing the Sundering Stroke, but, you know, no 2-drops, right? So he might want to just be curving out. If you're green, that's kind of what you want to be doing. Get a nice curve, and then you know, especially if you're mono green, you get some of the payoffs in cards like Outmuscle, but you need to have a creature in play to Outmuscle on turn 4. When I play against the green deck, typically that's one of the cards I'm most afraid of. It's like, please don't add him in Outmuscle here, because not only are you able to kill you know, your opponent's biggest threat, but you also get to get in for whatever damage that you can that turn. Get some Merrileaf Riders into the mix. Any combination of those cards. Very curious to see if there in fact is a blue-red deck and how that deck ends up, because like you said, it seems extremely open. Even despite the fact that Brad took that Sage of the Falls, there was still a thrill of possibility in that pack.
All right, let's see what he gets here. Ooh, there's a Bacon to a Pie. An Oakham Ranger is that front card. Oh, the Bacon of the Pie is definitely the best card here in the pack, and I wonder if Brad is going to try to stick with just medium green. Oh boy, another 5-drop too. He's got the Garenbrig Paladin pulled to the front.
Yeah, I mean,
is it too late to just take Bacon to a Pie and see where that takes you?
The thing is, he's already got a card that's similar in power level in the Sundering Stroke, so he might just be really wanting to make sure that he has enough playables. And Garenbrig Paladin is a fine card, but he just has to be mindful that, you know, his curve is quite high, right? So,
I have a statement for you, Paul. Why not both? Why can't I be green-black and splash that Sundering Stroke?
It's possible, but at the same time, Brad has several Adamant cards on top of that, so he really wants to have a mana base that's something like 12-5 or 11-6, because you really want to get that additional +1/+1 counter on your Adamant cards. And if not, then all of a sudden you've kind of made your deck overall weaker by trying to play a card like Bacon.
Interesting pick here. It looks like he's pulled Giant Killer to the front. Well, now he's got 7 Dwarves. I don't think he'll be taking that.
No.
But there is also a Charm Sleep if he did feel like blue was his secondary color. That's a perfectly fine pickup for his deck. He does need, you know...
Wow!
Whoa! Hello!
Wow.
I was wrong.
Yeah, that is surprising.
Cancel that order.
So
he did take 7 Dwarves.
The thing with the Charm Sleep is I think he's likely not going to be wanting to do that just because it requires you to have 2 blue mana, and he is kind of leaning heavily into green. But yeah, that is
not going to be mono green.
He might not be, but if you're going to be, again, have something like a 12-5 mana base, Charm Sleep is actually just not something that you generally want.
The thing is that when you look at his Adamant cards, they're 5 mana.
Well, he also had Hengewalker. If he wants to play that as well, and out muscles and cards like that. There's a lot of good adamant
This is
cards.
where we're at here. We're going to build around Hengewalker so we can get that 3/3 for 3 in there.
Again,
I don't know, buddy.
not a lot
Makes
of great
me
blue
nervous.
cards. So, I mean, honestly, I might have just considered the Giant Slayer there, just because the Giant Slayer was just by far the most powerful card in that pack, and there are some good splashable white cards as well.
Yeah, interesting. He also opened that Oakham Ranger. What does he have here? Insatiable Appetite pulled to the front. This also does give a clue to how Brad's approaching the format sort of from a general perspective, which is, you know, by taking the 7 dwarves, he's saying, like, I just want to get on the board. I need a 2-drop. I want to curve out. And if he takes the Insatiable Appetite here as well, all right, well, he took the Reeve Soul.
Okay.
Where are we going, says Brad Nelson. It's still relatively early here in pack number 2, so he has a little bit of time to figure it out. Ooh, was that an Oakham Adversary? Oh, there we go.
All right,
That's
so he's just going to be
easy
taking
one
that.
here.
That's an easier one.
Yeah.
Ardenvale Tactician, of course, the best white common in the set, especially if you're aggressively slanted, but very solid green creature for his deck. If there's one thing that we know about Brad's deck, it's going to be very heavy in green. And we saw kind of the power of this card when Mike Sigrist went 3-0 with a red-green deck, and the Adversary was just fantastic. You know, just every now and then your opponent plays a green creature on turn 2, and all of a sudden you have a 2-mana 2/3 creature that draws you a card whenever it hits, right?
Yeah, we saw that yesterday too.
Right, exactly. So that in conjunction with pump spells, cards like Bargain can allow you to kind of snowball games. So
Absolutely. We saw that yesterday too, and it was ugly. All right, Brad's got a bunch of red cards as options here. They're all kind of in the medium end of the range. He's going to go for Merchant of the Veil here. So perhaps the dip into Reeve Soul was just taking a little flyer, but he's kind of back on the green-red plan, it looks like here.
yeah. And Red Cap Raiders, a fine card to have. You know, red-green typically is going to have plenty of non-humans to be able to trigger that. And if you do, I mean, it's a 3-mana 4/3 when it attacks with Trample, so that can get in for a good amount of damage. Merchant of the Veil, typically not the type of creature that I generally like in my red-green deck because they tend to be a little more aggressive. But, you know, again, still a fine card to have in your deck if you need a filler.
There's Curious Pair, another Thrill of Possibility, though he already has one of those and maybe not even run that one.
Yeah, and that's a late Fairy Guide Mother, but of course he's not in white. But
Yeah.
the aggressive white drafter is going to be quite happy to see that Tactician and Fairy Guardian go by pretty late.
The Fairy Guide Mother, yeah.
Fairy Guide Mother.
Oh, my goodness sakes. Yeah, whoever he's passing to, if they're playing white, they're going to be like,
Wait, what
"Sweet,
happened? Yeah.
This is great." And looks like not a lot going on here for Brad as we wind down pack number 2. But again, you know, for all the discussion that you and I have had, Paul, if we look on the left side of the screen there, it's green card, red card, black card, and then all green and red cards again to the end. So you can see that Brad, at least in his mind, has very much settled into green-red here.
Right. I mean, the second pick 7 dwarves is particularly a statement. He goes, okay, look, I really want to play this stroke in my deck. I need a 2-drop. I just want to curve out. And you know what? That's still going to be a really big concern here for Brad. His only real 2-drop that's aggressively slanted is the 7 dwarves. Typically, you don't really want to be playing a card like Curious Pair in your red-green. You know, generally that deck tends to be more aggressively slanted, so you don't want that. He might play just because he doesn't have enough 2s, but he's really going to be looking to kind of flesh out the bottom part of his curve because right now he doesn't have a whole lot there.
Yeah, that is a very good point, Paul. That is going to probably be concern number 1 for Brad as he works his way into pack 3, is filling out that lower part of his curve. If you look at the bottom part of the screen there, you can see he just doesn't have anything going on in the early. He right now has 6 5-mana spells. Now, they're not all on color. You know, he picked up a Prize Griffin and whatever. But still, he's got the late end pretty well hammered out. But he really does need to work on the lower part of his curve. A couple removal spells down there, Scorching Fire, something like that. And then, you know, some good 2-drop playable creatures would be ideal for him.
And if you take a look at this pack, I mean, he really got cut off from green, despite the fact that, you know, after that first Fierce Witchstalker that he passed, he really cut off all the green cards. But that didn't really matter. If you take a look at this pack, I mean, he got the 1 Oakham Adversary, and that's basically it. Right?
Yeah,
you would expect more green to come in this pack. This is the pack where you hope to get kind of a late-ish out muscle. This is the pack where you're hoping to get some of those cards, but he didn't see any of those. On top of that, he didn't really see a lot of powerful red cards either. You know, my favorite 2-drop is Rimrock Knight, and he didn't see a single one of those to put into his deck.
You're not a 7 Dwarfs guy? That's not your...
Hey, you know what? I mean...
What's your personal best? What's your PR?
My PR for 7 Dwarves, it's not that impressive. 4?
Oh.
4?
Mine is 3.
Oh, okay. You know what?
I was like, don't say 4.
I was totally ready for you to be like, I had all 7.
No, yeah. I didn't. I don't know. No. I have seen 3 or 4 of them on the battlefield and been like, wow, okay, you did it.
Well, apparently somebody had 6 in a draft yesterday.
Oh, okay. So close.
Very close.
So close. Well, this last pack is going to be very important for Brad. He really does have some needs to be met here with that mana curve. He will not have a good deck if he cannot fill out that lower end of the curve. Seriously, like he is going to get smashed by any aggressive
His deck is just all creatures so far that are 3 or more in terms of cost.
Yeah.
He needs some cheap tricks and cheap creatures. And you know what? Maybe some removal spells too, outside of that Sundering Stroke. So he has a lot of holes that he needs to fill in this last pack.
So let's see if this pack is kind to Brad. You know, with some discipline, I feel like he can shore up the weaknesses and put out a playable deck either way. But if things go well, he could end up with a very good deck. Let's see what he gets here. Pack 3, pick 1.
Oh no. I don't think I saw anything here.
Was there anything?
No, there's a Garenbrig Squire.
Oh my, another Merchant of the Veil? That's what we're actually looking at here?
Yeah, there's plenty of reasonable cards, but nothing for him. And I don't know if he wants Garenbrig Paladin number 3 to go with that Enchanted Carriage that he already has. But you really want to take a Garenbrig Squire or a Weaselback Redcap first pick? I mean, please don't take a Weaselback Redcap first pick, right?
Oh no. Just for pride purposes, I don't think you can allow yourself to do that. I think I would actually take the 2/2 though, or the 2-drop, I should say.
Right.
But Brad once again just stays on the plan. Giant Knights for life, says Brad Nelson. Takes his Garenbrig Paladin. There's a Rosethorn Acolyte.
Okay.
There's Sir Farron the Hengehammer.
Yeah, this is interesting because it looks like he's not going to get enough playables by being closer to mono green. It looks like he's going to have to dip into red, which means Sir Farron is not quite as good. Still a good card.
Yeah.
But given the number of 5s that he has in his deck, he might want to just consider taking that Rosethorn Acolyte because he has 4 5s in his deck currently, along with that Sundering Stroke.
Yeah, good point. He could play it out on turn 3 and then untap, play a land, and play a 5-mana spell. And he does need some. He's got to close that gap. But he took Sir Farron, and you can see it. You know, if his mind state is similar to what you were describing before, Paul, where he wants to be in the 11 or even 12 forests, then Sir Farron does go up, and he's likely to be able to find a combat trick. Okay, there's a Fierce Witchstalker, though. Again, not really the part of the curve that he wants.
Look at that.
Outlaws Merriment?
Outlaws Merriment 3rd. So no Boros Drafters here so far. Yeah, definitely going to be looking to take this Fierce Witchstalker here. One of the problems, not the problems, but by taking the Sir Farron, and if you're kind of committing to play that in your deck, then all of a sudden the other 2-drop you have probably won't be making it in, right? The 7 Dwarves, because you're not going to be playing 7 Dwarves with 5 or 6 mountains in your deck typically.
Right. All right, well, he took the Fierce Witchstalker, which, good.
It's a good card.
Good card, but boy, I got to tell you, the 4-drop slot is not where Brad wanted the help. He'll take it. He'll take the powerful card here and do what he's got to do. But it's just so not what he really needed.
Wow, so that's a very late Edgewall Innkeeper, but I don't think he has a lot of adventure cards, right? There was a Rosethorn Acolyte, no Rimrock Knight.
He's got the Merchant of the Veil. I mean, he might have 2 or maybe 3.
Right. However, one card that I've been very impressed with in the format is Embereth Shieldbreaker. There's plenty of artifacts that you can kill in the format, and it's a 2-drop. But Brad going for the upside here. He's got, I believe, maybe 2 to 3 adventure creatures, but of course, we still have a few more picks to go, I guess. Wow!
Wow, there's Yorvo. Hello.
Okay.
Now the mono green deck's starting to come into focus, but it is a major concern what you highlighted a minute ago. He's going to be short on playables for mono green. That is not going to be possible for him with all the red cards that he got in pack 2.
Right, but I mean,
so how good is Yorvo in Can we go to 12? 12 Forest?
You just take the Yorvo here, and I think you just try to make it work.
Man, he's got Yorvo and Surferin.
Right, get those artifacts in there. He's got the curve. I mean, just find whatever you need to fill out this curve now, because now, these cards are powerful enough where you might want to... Oh!
What is going on?
This is just the Dream Pack 3. That's another Surferin. He needed a cheap, powerful threat. Now he doubled down on Surferins to go with that Yorvo that he got 5th pick.
This is going to, these last few picks, the Surferin and then the Yorvo and then another Surferin are going to change the way that he builds this entire deck.
Absolutely.
But he'll be happy to have to make those changes.
Part of me still wishes that he took that Garenbrig Squire, pick 1. I know it's not exciting, but you really want those 2s.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was, I think he should have prioritized curve rather than another 5.
All right, so...
Nothing really here, I suppose.
Does anything even have Adventure on it? No?
No, it doesn't. So maybe just Fell the Pheasant for his sideboard is worth a pick here, since nothing else looks particularly likely to make the main. Yeah, that's what he does.
Could also maybe consider splashing that Fling with the Surferins and get a creature big enough to get the final few points of damage.
No, that's a good point.
Because I believe he already has a Fell the Pheasant. But
oh, okay. There's Red Cap Raiders.
Gingerbread is a 1-drop that you could play.
I would take Gingerbread. Yeah. I mean, he doesn't have any way to augment it particularly, but like...
Right. He doesn't have Halberd, and he doesn't have a lot of non-human payoffs, so maybe he's just going to look to...
Red Cap Raiders.
Yeah. His mana is going to be awkward because, he needed to... For the Fell the Pheasant and the Red Cap Raiders, those 2 packs, he needed to pick up either artifacts, even like Jousting Dummy or anything, if you want to kind of commit to mono green, and I feel like he's going to be a little short. And that's a big table.
Gotta snap it up here.
He might be looking at the Merchant of the Veil, though, because he has that Edgewall Innkeeper.
Yeah, you're right. That is what he's going to do. So what it looks like is Brad has not overly committed to the green thing. I was thinking he may just say, okay, I'm going to take this Gingerbread. I'm going to take anything colorless that I can, and I'm just going to try my hardest to get as many forests into this deck as possible. That does not seem to be the case. He seems to be like, well, if I don't play my Yorvos on 2 or my Surferins on 3, I can live with that. I'll play them a turn or 2 off curve and just have to make it work. And, I mean, you can see why he could think that. He is going to be short playables if he tried to go mono green or nearly mono green.
Yeah, he's got some power in here, but the biggest issue of Brad's deck is that his mana is just going to be awkward. It's going to be, he's probably going to have something like a 12-5 or 11-6 mana base, but there's just potentially going to be those games where you're not going to play that Yorvo turn 3. You're not going to be playing that Surferin turn 2. And if you can't play that Surferin turn 2, he doesn't have any other 2-drops that he can even play.
That's right. He would have loved to see a Garenbrig Carver or 2 in this pack. Right in the middle part of the pack that works well with his Surferins. It also works well with his Edgewall Innkeeper. I mean, does he have a pump spell?
Not that I can think of. No Rimrock Knights.
Nope.
No Bargins. No Garenbrig Carvers.
I don't think he took that Insatiable Appetite that
he had the chance to. Yeah, he took a Reeve Soul out of that pack.
Right, and that could come back to bite him too.
Yes.
Because Surferin
with pump spells
loves a pump spell.
Yeah, without it, it's still good, right?
Yes.
It's a 2-drop that pumps your other creatures, but if you can find a way to keep him alive during combat with a trick, like you just get to get in for so much damage.
Yeah, this is a really interesting draft that we just got to see from Brad, because this is a type of draft where things actually went quite well in Pack 3, and it made me more nervous, right? Because it went well, but it went in a hard direction that he can't really take this deck. So now he's going to be in a position where he's going to have to compromise his mana and kind of cross his fingers, hope it works out, because he needed to fill out his curve, which he did somewhat. But picking up 2 double green 2-drops doesn't really do that. It's not quite what we were looking for there. But again, you can't ignore the power level boost that he picked up in Pack 3 here.
Yeah, absolutely. Surferin?
Yeah, Henchhammer. That's one of the sweetest.
Right, along with Yorvo. Very, very powerful cards. But again, Brad with the powerful cards, but he has several things that he's missing. He doesn't have a lot of interaction, right? That is a weakness with, of course, green decks.
What did he find?
There is no outmuscle, and typically, if you're looking to be aggressive and you don't have those removal spells, you need to rely on combat tricks. It's really hard to just win by just going creature, and if all of a sudden if your opponent just plays a 5/5 and you just can't do anything, then your opponent's decks that kind of have more powerful effects in the late game are just going to kind of overpower you. So, you know, again, Brad has some power, but he's missing some crucial pieces to really put this deck over the top, I feel.
That's right. So interesting stuff. Now, remember, Brad came in with the perfect record. He was 8-0 overnight. So, you know, his expectations for this draft are like, just keep the wheels on the carriage, as it were, and just, you know, get me like a 2-1. He'd be like, book it. You know,
he would lock that in right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll have to wait and see. What we're going to do now is we're going to take a short break. But when we come back, we've got more booster draft action. We've got Christian Hauck was our recorded match. We'll be doing that over at the news desk. But for now, a short break. Hang with us.